Merry meet, I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin, and I'm here tonight talking about the four main clairs and their connection to the chakra system. If you're here with me live, you can drop comments in and questions for me, and I will make sure I get to them in the Q&A at the end. So I am going to talk a little bit about the third quarter moon at the end. We're going to talk a little bit about balancing since we are talking about chakra balancing as well tonight. But I would like to dive right in and just do a little bit of a refresher on the chakra system in general. So those of you who've been following me for a while, you probably know some about the chakras. You may have learned it from me or from others, but for those who are newer, I'm going to give you a little debriefing on the chakra system. So, the chakra system is our energetic system. It's made up of energy centers within an energy meridians within an energy system in general, which is what the chakra system is. And each chakra aligns to our nerve ganglia. And what's very interesting about this is it creates a connection between the physical and the energetic. So this is going to be really important when we start talking about some of the clairs because there are physical manifestations of what happens with our intuition, and they're each going to be connected to these energy centers in the body. Now there's seven main chakras. They start at the base of the spine. That's where our root chakra is. This is about our stability and our security. Moving up into the sacral chakra, that's a few inches below the navel. This is about our sensuality, about our creativity, our ability to really flow, go with the flow. It's associated with the element of water. Moving up, right above the navel, we have the solar plexus. The solar plexus is about our confidence, about our self esteem, our self belief, our will to go out in the world and kind of do what we need to do, what we want to do. And then above that is the heart. Now, the heart bridges the bottom three we just talked about and the upper three. Now, the heart is about our compassion, our relationships with others, and with ourselves. And then moving into the upper three chakras, we have the throat here, right at the center of the throat. This is about our communication. It's also a higher creativity center. So whereas we talked about the sacral chakra being related to creativity, this chakra is also related to creativity, but in more of a spiritual way. This is how we speak things out into the ether and have them manifest. And then moving up from there, we have the third eye. This is about our intuition. This entire episode's about that. But you'll notice when we get in that only one of the Clair senses is actually even connected to the third eye. The third eye is also about our expansiveness, our ability to really dial in and listen to our inner voice. And then we have the crown, and the crown connects us out to the divine, allows us to experience a connection with the divine in which we basically lose ourselves and become immersed. So that is the seven main chakras. There are also some minor ones, but when it comes to our intuition, most of the time we're talking about these seven. Now, the chakra system comes from the tantric yoga system, and what's very important about this system is that it's a system of opposites. So, what this means is that anything that there's an opposite of, so there's an inside us, there's an outside us, there's the feminine side of our energy, there's the masculine side of our energy, and this has nothing to do with our gender. These are just simply energies. And there is the above and the below that we talk about a lot as witches, the microcosm, the macrocosm. We can go on and on and on and list off all of these polarities. But what the chakra system does is it helps us integrate these polarities, integrate these opposites so we find wholeness. Now, when we get in and start talking about the clairs, we're going to discover that the key to all of this is finding wholeness. And in fact, this is also the goal of shadow work. So when our system is balanced, our energy is flowing optimally, it's moving properly through the body. And countless systems tell us this is not just the chakra system, there are systems all over the world that tell us that if we can balance the energy in our body, whatever that means to the system, then we will open ourselves up to more expansion, whatever that means to the system. For our purposes, what this means is that it includes our expansion that is required for our intuition. So we really cannot be contracted when we want to have intuition. Just like we can't be contracted when we want to be creative. If we want to expand outward, then we need the expansion in our energy system as well. Now, our intuition, for this reason, is dependent on that life force, that energy that's moving through our body. In this system, we call it prana, we could call it chi or ki or mana. There's all these different names for this same thing depending on the system you're studying. This is the energy that moves particularly through the chakras, and it allows us to become aware of the signals that are coming in on a conscious level. Because on an unconscious level, there's signals coming in all the time, but we're just not aware of it. So when we are able to balance the system, what that means is that we have the energy flowing more optimally, and therefore we're more aware of the input. Now, our intuition is not just about listening to the inner voice, though that is one aspect of it, and we'll talk about that in turn. But why this is so important is when the energy is moving through a certain chakra, it can ignite a certain clair. So now we're going to shift over and talk about the four main clairs, and I will make a note here that depending on who you talk to, they may tell you there's just these four, or they may tell you that there's seven or there's nine. I will do a future episode where we'll actually get into some of the more minor ones as well, but for today we're just going to be talking about the four main ones. And it does seem that the minor ones tend to be extensions of some of these major ones anyway. So these four major clairs we're going to talk about today are Clairsentience, Claircognizance, Clairaudience, and Clairvoyance. And we're going to talk about them in this order because this is the order that they are developed in the body, or from a different perspective, this is the order that they're connected to the rising chakra system. All right, so diving into clairsentience. So this literally translates to clear feeling. Now, I've seen a few infographics go around, including one that I shared in the group, where they were saying that clairsentience was about clear physical feeling. And there's truth in that, and it's also not the whole picture of what clairsentience is. So most people who are going to tell you that clairsentience is about feeling energy, and I do think that that is the biggest component of clairsentience. So in clairsentience, we are able to experience energy, and most of the time we're thinking about this as other people's energy. So perhaps walking into a room, being able to feel the vibe there, that's clairsentience. Feeling a certain sense about a person, or a certain feeling about a person, even if you've never really met them, that's clairsentience. But clairsentience is also about experiencing and feeling our own energy. So there are some people who feel energy to a greater degree in their body than others, and those people are more likely a little higher on that clairsentient scale. Now, this might come as a surprise to you, but I'm going to posit that I believe that we are all capable of experiencing all four of these clairs. We just are stronger in certain areas than others. But we certainly can learn how to develop all four of these if we put in the time and the work. Now, clairsentience is also about feeling emotional energy. And so this is where the whole empath comes in. So most empaths are probably clairsentient because they're picking up emotions from other people. Now, clairsentience relates to the second and the third chakras. And I would say maybe the root as well. But really, it's found in our second and our third chakras. And this has a lot to do with these centers being where our humanity is. It really like connects us out to the tribe. The lower chakras are very tribal, very ancestral. They are the first to develop in the womb. And in fact, clairsentience is also the first clair to develop in the womb. Now, this is our, people who are strong in this clair, they tend to come into the world feeling a lot. So these people may have been deemed too sensitive when they were growing up, and this can be a reason for shutting off this clair. But what we're going to learn is that later you don't get rid of these. None of these really ever go away. So sometimes people are kind of worried that, oh, mine have disappeared, or I used to, have better intuition, has disappeared. It hasn't disappeared. It's just become dampened by other things in your life. So we will learn at the end there are ways that we can amplify some of these and work with them. But when it comes to our clairsentience, we are probably able to feel this one in a greater degree when we are very young, and then it can get shut down. We feel the subtle energy, the emotions of the people around us, our caregivers. We look for cues from them too to tell us if we're right. So if we are shut down, then this will become a problem for us in the future. So these messages, hold on a second. Yeah. Okay. So as I was going, these messages come to us oftentimes through physical sensations. So this is where when people say that clairsentience is a clair of the physical body or of physical feeling, there is some truth in that, because most of the time this intuition is coming through different parts of the body. So I recently asked a question in the group, is where do you feel your intuition in your body, if anywhere? And people gave a wide range of different answers, and some of the answers actually were pointing more to different clairs. So for some people would say, I feel it up in my head as thoughts. So that would be more like claircognizance, which we're going to talk about next. Clairsentience is the people who say, I feel it in the gut, I feel it in my heart. There was people who said, I felt it in my hand, or in the back of my hand, or on my arm, or the back of my neck. Things like that. When the intuition is coming through the body, that tends to be more clairsentience. The gut instinct is probably the most common of all of the physical feelings that intuition might manifest in different people. But it is important to note that it isn't the only place. So sometimes people are a little surprised to learn that clairsentience isn't just felt in the gut. It can be felt in other places. And sometimes, like I've shared my story before, when I was trying to connect my intuition to what I was feeling in my stomach, what I was actually connecting to is anxiety. And so it is important for us to really actually study our own system and our own experience, so that we're not just buying into, what the mass majority of people say. In clairsentience, again, why it would be connected to empaths is because people are able to read the emotions of others, and like I said, can kind of sense the collective energy in a place. Now, another thing about clairsentience that I think is really interesting is that you can have clairsentience, but not really experience it as an intuition. And this is what I mean. So people who are really connected to their bodies, like a lot of us in the world, we're living with the head cut off. And a lot of us who are witches and empaths and spiritual people, we're really living up into the head, because there is this sort of elevation of the upper chakras in our society. But what can happen in clairsentience is just simply being able to feel the body really well. So for example, what this could be is feeling a tightness in the throat when the throat chakra is out of balance. So sometimes people don't feel this at all. They're not going to feel any sensations in the throat, yet the throat chakra is out of balance. And we know this because we can see it in the psychological symptoms. So for example, having trouble speaking, having trouble, getting your own truth out. This is more of a psychological thing as opposed to a pain in the throat or the neck or a hoarse voice. So people who are more clairsentient, they can often look to their chakra system for clues as to which chakra is out of balance. So for myself right now, there's a lot going on with my throat chakra. I had a lab that came back about the thyroid, which was a little bit off. And immediately I said, oh, time to work on my throat chakra. So it doesn't mean don't go and get advice from a medical doctor, but there's a lot that we can do energetically as well. And at the same time, I had tons of neck pain. My voice was getting hoarse. All these signs were pointing to working on the throat. And I know that I am clairsentient. I've known that for a while. So it doesn't surprise me. The other thing could be like having stomach pain or digestive issues when it's time to work on the solar plexus. It doesn't mean that that other people can't also experience that, but it tends to happen more in those who are clairsentient. Okay, jumping into claircognizance. Now, claircognizance is the second of the two lower chakras, of the two lower clairs in the chakra system. Now, claircognizance literally translates to clear knowing. So people will say that the messages come through as a thought. So remember, in clairsentience, the messages come through as a feeling in the body, perhaps, or as the feeling of an emotion. In claircognizance, it coming through as a thought. And people will tell you who have this, they'll say, I know that I know it, but I don't know how I know it. So it's a very, very classic phrase of a claircognizant. So this can be a very powerful clair, though it is one that's often underestimated. People kind of think that the clairvoyance and the clairaudience is better, or is the one they should be aiming for, and they sort of forget that claircognizance can also be very powerful. Now, claircognizance, like clairsentience, is connected to the second and the third chakras, and then sometimes people also say it's connected to the fourth, which is that bridge between the lower and the upper chakras. Now, I've heard people say that claircognizance is connected to the seventh chakra, the crown. And while I definitely see that connection because it's thoughts in the head, honestly, I think that's a misunderstanding of the chakra system, because the crown chakra isn't actually about your thoughts at all. And in fact, in a lot of systems, especially if you study tantric systems from people where the information was passed down from gurus over the years, perhaps you were able to study with someone from India, or you actually went to India and studied, that you will learn that they don't even really work with the crown chakra. It's totally its own thing. But I do see the connection from the Western perspective of why this would be connected to our claircognizance. And in a lot of ways too, since the crown is our connection to the divine, we could think of maybe our claircognizance as being the thoughts coming down from the divine energy. Now, the information that comes through in claircognizance can seem similar to what comes through in clairaudience. Clairaudience is what we're going to get to next, and that's about hearing your messages. So since most of this is taking place within the brain anyway, within the self, the two can sort of feel similar. But I'm just going to tell a story of what claircognizance looks like, and then when we get to clairaudience, it's definitely not, you're going to see it's definitely not quite the same thing. So when 3 years ago, right before COVID began, a couple months before COVID began, I had to move. The people that we were renting our home from decided they were going to sell it. And so we decided that we were going to buy a house in the LA market, which is for crazy people. But, and I'm not joking when I say that we looked at over 100 homes. And so when we were about, and most of these homes were not good. Not good at all. So there was a moment kind of, I'd say about a third of the way into the journey, we looked for homes for about 3 months. And a third of the way in, we were driving home. It's just very frustrating when you would go look at like 12 homes a day and like just nothing, just literally nothing you could imagine living in. And this thought passed through my head, and it just was October 22nd. I mean, actually, I think the thought actually began with like, why are you worried? It's not even, the house isn't even on the market. And then in my mind, it was just October 22nd. And this was like beginning of September at this point. And so I stressed out all during that time. And here's the moral of the story is that we actually ended up finding a home, and they accept our offer on October 22nd. So if I trusted my claircognizance during that time, think about from beginning of September to that October 22nd date, I could have been carefree and not worried. But man, I let myself descend into more and more and more worry as the date approached when we had to move. And but the whole time, my claircognizance was trying to tell me, this date so that I wouldn't stress out. So it's really important for us to try to master this, and it's not easy, as you probably know if you've tried, and as I'll say at the end, it takes patience, but we can eventually learn how to trust this, and that can lead to much more peace and calmness in our lives. But it can be difficult to trust because there's always this question like, what's the difference between claircognizance and just our plain old random thoughts? And there's not really a great answer. I don't really have a great answer for this. But as you do begin to balance your own energy, what you're going to find is that there is a difference and that you're going to begin to discover what that difference is like. And and also, I should note is that typically in claircognizance, this is completely detached from emotion. So there's not any, even though what the information that came to me was like a good message, you know, like your house is coming on 10/22. There's like no emotion. It was just simply a thought. And so if you're having an emotion attached to a thought, it is a probably better than average chance that it's not claircognizance. And again, like at the end, I'm going to talk about some specific things you can do for each of the clairs, but most of this is about really trying to figure it out how your own intuition is working for you. Now, clairaudience is related to the throat chakra. So the throat chakra is not just about speaking, it's also about listening. And in this case, it's obviously about listening to the inner voice. So this is where we connect to our higher self here in the throat and where we deeply and intuitively learn how to hear. Now, a common misconception about clairaudience, which I think leads to many people not realizing that they have it, is that people think that they're going to hear the voice through their physical ears. So almost like a auditory hallucination. And so the reality is that most people who have clairaudience don't hear it out in the physical world as like some other person's voice. And maybe it would sound like another person's voice, but most of the time it's taking place inside of their head, which is why it can be a little confusing between that and claircognizance. Most of the time it will sound like your own voice, but people will say that there's another person's voice that sounds like in their head. And this voice is generally not harsh and tormenting. So anybody who has unfortunately suffered from auditory hallucinations where they're hearing voices off, those voices are generally not nice. A lot of times that they're tormenting and they're harsh and they can be cruel, and they just won't let you be. Whereas in clairaudience, the people who really experience clairaudience will say that the voice is very calming, very soothing. Um, so that can be an important distinction there. And the messages also, it's really important to remember the messages don't always come through as a voice either, because it's clairaudience. It's not clear voice, it's clear hearing. So it's anything that you can hear. So people who are clairaudient can get their messages through music or sound. So these are going to be the people who are likely to be searching for an answer or something. They turn on the radio and the song that's playing has the answer or has information that is connected to what they're thinking about. Or they'll hear animal calls or cries that will give them information, intuitive information. Or perhaps turning on the TV and hearing something, or overhearing a conversation that other two people are having that you're not a part of, but it somehow relates to what you are going through. So always important to remember that there's more than one way to receive clairaudient information. And then there is the clairvoyance. So when people say the word psychic, this is usually what they think about. Clairvoyance is connected to the third eye. But while some people may say that this is truly the symbol of psychic abilities, clairvoyance is just simply another one of the clairs. And here's a common misconception in this one is that people think that the images will be physical. So they'll see something out in the physical world, similar to like a visual hallucination. But most of the time, people who are clairvoyant actually see the images inside of their minds. And these come through their inner eyes instead. That may appear like imagination, so many people will not even recognize it. So same with clairaudient. Many people don't even recognize that they have these because that misconception that it needs to be this kind of very obvious thing happening on outside. So the thing that's true as well is that oftentimes the information from clairvoyance will come through very symbolically or very metaphorically. For example, seeing a vision of a person drowning often doesn't mean that the person is going to drown, but perhaps that person is drowning under work or drowning under pressure or overwhelm or something like that. So a lot of times these visions will be symbolic. And again, we have that kind of same question we ask with all of the clairs, like how do we know this is really clairvoyance and not just imagination or daydreams or something? And again, it's not an easy question to answer, and it does require practice and patience. So at the end, like I said, I'm going to be giving some tips on how to develop each of these different clairs. But for now, I wanted to talk just a little bit about how they develop, because I think this is really important for those of you who feel that you are not, do not have these optimized, or are unsure about which clairs you're dominant in, or you're unsure whether you have them or how to make them work. I think this next piece is going to be really important for you. So from about ages 0 to 7, this is where we come into the world. We're trying to figure out who we are, and we decide if it's safe or not to develop the parts of our intuition, these 4 main clairs, or if we're going to shut them down and perhaps develop them later. Now, some people will shut them down right then, and they're just never going to go on and develop them, and then other people will come back later as an adult, or perhaps they get initiated in through a traumatic event or some kind of a dark night of the soul, and then these begin to develop later in life. So while some people will feel all the clairs as children, and perhaps all the clairs as adults, as children, most of us come into the world as either lower clairdominant or lower chakra clairdominant or upper chakra clairdominant. So what that would mean for the lower clairs, that would be the clairsentience and the claircognizance. They often go hand in hand, not always, but a lot of the time, or a dominance in the clairvoyance or the clairaudience. And again, those can go together, but don't have to. Now, as we learn more about the clairs, what we will realize is that we can develop the ones that we're not as strong in. So if you know that you're very strong at clairsentience, then there is a way that you can then develop the other ones because of what you know about the chakra system and how it works, and that idea of bringing everything into balance. So when we are predominantly upper clair dominated, this is, like I said, clairaudient, clairvoyant, what we may experience is feeling ungrounded. So people who are dominant up here with these upper clairs, it's really important for them, more so than other people, to really be checking in. Am I grounded? Am I grounded? You know, the root actually connects all the way up to the third eye. So there's this connection between the base of the spine and our intuition. So it's really important, especially if we're working up here all the time, to be bringing the energy down periodically, checking to see that it is. Here's a sign that you're not grounded. You know, people who are these upper clair dominant may feel agitated, heart racing, feeling ungrounded, and just kind of feeling sort of out of sorts. So if you feel that way and you know that you have these upper clairs more dominant, then I would suggest trying to bring in some kind of grounding practices. Now, when we're primarily or predominantly lower clair dominant, what we may feel like is that we merge with other people energetically, and we may struggle to create boundaries, and it may be hard to see where I begin and you end, and you end and I begin, or you begin and I end. So for these people, setting proper boundaries and kind of working with the upper clairs too can be helpful. So what are we going to do if we want to further develop our intuition, or perhaps we feel like we don't have any intuition, we want to develop it, or we have some and we want to further develop it? So what are we going to do? So the first thing is that we want to figure out which we are. So are we lower clair dominant, or are we upper clair dominant? So some people are going to know this right away, and some people aren't really going to know the answer to the question. So if you know the answer to the question right here, if you say that you are more upper clair dominant, clairvoyance, clairaudient, then you would want to work to develop the lower chakras. Okay, so I should say you would work to develop the lower clairs, but you would do that through working the lower chakras. So it's all about balance. So if we're strong up here, We want to become strong down here. And what's very interesting is if you're clairvoyant, clairdominant, but don't really have the other two, they tend to come online when you start working the lower centers. Now, if you answer the question, you said I'm more lower clairdominant, so that would be either clairsentient or claircognizant, then what you would want to do is you want to work with the upper chakras in order to develop the upper clairs, because again, we're trying to build balance here. We want balance for the whole system. So if you can't answer the question, if you say I'm not sure, or if you say all of them, I'm all for, which might be the answer, or none of them, then what I would suggest doing is working to balance the entire system, because that's the answer to everything, is just balance the whole system and everything else will just follow along. So the next question, or the next thing we want to consider, is which clair do you exhibit the most? So if you say you're upper clairdominant, then you're probably exhibiting either clairvoyance or clairaudience. So I would think about which is the one that seems to be the strongest. What do you get most messages from? And what you would do is then work with the individual chakras for that particular clair. So what will happen is when we're balancing, we're trying to get the energy to be optimal. So this is like for our overall intuition. But when we're working here, we're working directly with a certain clair. So if you feel that you're clairvoyant, then you're going to want to work with the third eye. If you feel that you're clairaudient, then you're going to want to work with the throat. If you feel that you are sentient or claircognizant, then you're going to want to work with the lower chakras if you want to strengthen those, okay? So just so I'm not confusing everybody, the first thing is working to find the balance in the whole system. So that's where you're working with the opposite of what you think you are. And then this would be actually like, now we're going to target a specific one. So we want to strengthen that one. So what would we do here? Okay, so for clairsentience, if you get strong intuitive feelings, what I would suggest doing is writing them down, because one of the number one problems here with clairsentience is that we're not sure if what we're feeling is really happening. So there's a big thing that a lot of people will say, a question that they'll ask about. So if we write them down in the journal over weeks and months, so I would suggest doing this. It's going to take some time. None of the good stuff, the stuff that you really want, to develop these abilities, none of this is like quick fixes. And really, honestly, it probably shouldn't be, right? When we're really trying to evolve ourselves spiritually, evolve our gifts, we should expect to put some work into it. So a couple of months, a couple of weeks at least, to a couple of months, you will write down these feelings that you have. So for example, if you have a strong intuitive feeling, or you have like feelings in the body and you think you're clairsentient, so I would start writing all of this down. And when you record this, what you can do then is go back and you'll begin to see patterns. So you'll begin to see the ones that turned out to probably not be intuitive, but you'll then be able to see the ones that did turn out to be intuitive, and you'll begin to see the difference between them. Because again, because everybody's system works differently, we have to discover this for ourselves. Like we can learn from each other and each other's experiences, but at the end of the day, it's very experiential. We've got to be inside us to really hone these skills. So the other thing is, when you are recording all of this and you're beginning to see these patterns, what you will realize is that you'll start to recognize more of them. Just this very simple process of just recording these down, eventually you'll begin to just pick up more of them. It's just opening you up. It's just expanding you more. Now, another thing I would say for clairsentience is, again, to pay attention to where in your body you feel the intuition. And you can record that, and then remember, it's not always your gut. It could be anywhere. Okay, so for claircognizance, so people who want to strengthen that, then it's kind of the same idea here, which instead of writing down or recording the feelings, you want to record the thoughts that come. So if you have a thought that seems to come out of nowhere, so like I said before, these often will feel like a download, or like it came from outside of you, or where did it just kind of pops into your head. So if you have this sort of thought like that, it may be intuitive, it may be part of your claircognizance, and it may not. And so if you write them down over time, a month or two, you're going to begin to see the patterns. You're going to be better able to see which ones are and which ones aren't. And then, going forward, when you have these thoughts, you'll know better which one's going to be claircognizant and which one isn't. You'll be able to see those patterns, and that's the important thing. Now, with audience, we really want to practice asking for clairaudient messages. So here, you could always, for any of these, you could always record anything down just to look for patterns later. But with clairaudience, what you could do is you could just ask the universe for a sign, for a message, right? And then ask your spirit guides or your higher self to deliver it through your clairaudience. What I would then do is pay attention in the next hour, 2 hours, maybe for the next several hours, I would pay attention to the sounds that you hear and see if any of these have an answer for you. So conversations, music, sounds that's around you. Now with clairvoyance, it's important to pay attention to the images that pop up in your head. So just saying with the clairaudience is the sounds that you are hearing, this is the images. So those images that pop into your head out of nowhere, that just seem to come out of the blue, I would record these and then again go back and look for patterns. But another thing you can do for clairvoyance that is very good is candle gazing. So I've talked about this in other episodes, but it's very simple. You just take a candle, you darken the room. You can have a little mood light in the background. I always have a salt lamp going in the background, but you'll put the candle about eye level and a few inches away, like maybe 12 to 15 inches away, and then you gaze at the candle, soften your eyes, and try that. And if you try that several times a week over the course of a few weeks, it does stimulate the pineal gland and can stimulate your third eye as well. The other thing I wanted to note here before we kind of come to the end is that when we do start to spiritually evolve, we may and clear out some of the blockages. So spiritually evolving generally means we're clearing out blockages physically, emotionally, and mentally. Some of these clairs may just amplify on their own. So it could just be a byproduct of it. I found that myself when I started my shadow work journey. I was not expecting. I didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to amplify my intuition, but it came as a byproduct of that. But oftentimes it just doesn't happen out of nowhere, and we do have to develop them. So what's, I think, kind of a takeaway message here is that, we will have to put time into anything good that we want to bring into our life in general. And when we start to tune into our energetic system, especially if we're going into the energetic system to develop a clair, like, so let's say you decide I'm going to work with the second and the third chakras in order to better amplify my clairsentience. When you start to work down there, you're going to start clearing out energetic debris that's been there for God knows how long, because some of this stuff is going back all the way to childhood. And as we do this, as we sort of heal, we may discover more blockages and more places to heal. So I always just want to mention a note to that. So if you go in to try to work with some of these centers to develop your clairs, just know that there may be something before you get there. These layers you got to pull back as you start to heal your energetic system. So one other thing that I think is important to note here is the idea of self-belief, because honestly, when I talk to people and I ask them what is your number one concern about your intuition, very, very many of them will say my belief in it or my doubt. I don't know if it's intuition or not. I don't know if it's this clair or not. And the people just seem to doubt themselves, asking if it's real. This is a major issue in our society because we live in a society that has celebrates the logical and really does not celebrate the intuitive. And so we have no choice because we live in this society. So we are not going to be able to develop an intuitive state when we are contracted down in self-doubt. Unfortunately, it's very hard to do that. So my very best advice when it comes to this is to make a deal with yourself, because this deal is not going to hurt anybody. I can't really think of anybody this deal is going to hurt. So you make this deal with yourself that you are not going to doubt yourself. There's going to be no doubting for the next, and then fill in the blank. So is it going to be a week? Is it going to be a month? I always try a month, maybe 6 months if you're really feeling ambitious, or if that seems like way too much, a week's too much, just go for a day. But in that space of time, whatever amount of time you choose, there's going to be no doubting during that time. So you make this deal with yourself, okay? So you make a commitment during that time also to work to develop one of these clairs. Give yourself patience and time, because as I said, this isn't going to be something that you're going to be able to do overnight, and do not expect immediate results. So it's really important that we manage our expectations when we're working with the intuitive centers. But what I will say is that though your results will not be immediate, they will come. They will come for sure. I promise you that. There will be some kind of a result, and it can be quite transformative when you shift that idea of self-doubt into self-belief. Now, also know that most of your messages will not come on demand. Most people who are intuitive will tell you they don't just come on your demand, and it's learning how to kind of navigate that system. That's why we're kind of recording everything in those journals, so we can learn more about our own intuition, about our own experience with the clairs. As you ground yourself, as you find more balance, as you are able to approach all of this from a more calm and patient state of mind, more and more and more of this will come your way, and you'll trust yourself more and more. So it's a really self-perpetuating cycle. If you make that deal, I'm going to trust myself for the next month. It's an experiment I'm doing. Just try it. And I tell you, it really is a really big switch in the mind. It really can open up a lot of doors for you. So I did want to mention that it is the last quarter moon tomorrow. So if you're watching this, this is being recorded on Wednesday. So Thursday, the 15th, it will be the last quarter moon. Good time to pause and reflect on where you are in the cycle. A great time to work on balance. So if you want to do balancing, you can do chakra meditations to try to balance your chakras, or chakra balancing yoga, or you can do anything that's going to bring balance in. So if you know there's a chakra out of balance, work on that one tomorrow, or during this kind of last quarter phase. Because what happens is once we pass into the waning crescent moon, we really start to turn inward, and we start working on perhaps our shadow work. So this is just a good moment to kind of pause and ask yourself, what is in balance in my life right now, and what is not in balance? So I'm going to end here. If there's no questions or anything, I'm going to end here by mentioning that I have a Yule ritual taking place this Sunday, December 18th at 4 p.m. Pacific. It's online via Zoom, and this is in conjunction with my Coven of Midnight's Flame. So tickets are now available on Eventbrite, and you may find these posts in the group where you can get a ticket, or you can find it on my page, or if you're on my mailing list, you'll receive it in your email. And you can get your ticket by donation for donating as little as $1. It's the lowest amount that the system will let you put in. And we will be honoring Mithra and Anahita, and we're going to be exploring the concept of self-belief within our magic. So if you were kind of intrigued by this idea of self-belief, this ritual is going to be really, really moving and transformative. Our true self-belief can take our magic to the next level, and it really can bring out our ability to do things that might be perceived as miraculous in the eyes of some people. So I think that it's always interesting as pagans. I grew up as a Christian, but I've been a pagan for 25 some years. But I think it's really interesting this time of year. I think about this story about Jesus, and as the Son of God, was he the Son of God? I don't know. Us pagans, we're going to say probably not. Maybe he's the son of some God, but he's certainly the son of the God, right? Especially those of us who are polytheists or atheists even. So was he really the Son of God, or was he just simply the world's greatest magician and witch? So I want to explore this idea as well in the ritual. we'll be exploring this archetype of the magician and how a person can become that magician themselves and how they can make miracles with their magic. And after the ritual, or after the center of the ritual, we're also going to have a good old fashioned bloat. If you've never done one, they are awesome. This is where we go around in a circle and we toast each other's accomplishments. And so you're free to just kind of listen if you come live, or you can participate. It's just all around. It's a very, very, very fun activity. So I highly encourage you to get your ticket. Like I said, you can get it as little as $1 and join us. And for those who get a ticket and can't come, there will be a replay that will be sent to everybody afterwards who bought a ticket. All right, I'm going to sign off. I hope you enjoyed this episode tonight. If you have any questions about your clairs or your intuition in general, please don't hesitate to comment here or message me, or you can email me at aislinlumina@bodymindwitchcraft.com. Until next time, blessed be.